I'm only doing that because apparently, I think are we live, Dave? We are live. Holy cow, oh my goodness. So, I would like to call the meeting to order at exactly 9 a.m. How about that? And with that, I am asking Councillor Clark to read the land acknowledgement. Please.
Okay, here we go. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robertson-Huron Treaty Number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Clark. Much appreciated. And with that, I do have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Armour and seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that the special council meeting agenda dated Wednesday, January 11th, 2023 be adopted as printed and circulated. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will move right along to our first item, and that is in reference to our significant weather event. And before we start with Director Vicky's presentation, I just wanted to say that how grateful I am personally, but also on behalf of council, I'm pretty sure I can say this, how grateful we all were during the last few weeks. It was one incredible event. And I know we all have stories, but a heartfelt thank you, starting actually with our CAO. I want to say thank you to you because from my perspective, I heard from you every day, and sometimes more than that, just to give me a sense of we're here, we're around, we're doing this, we're doing that. But I also big thank you to our director, who we're all going to hear from shortly, because I don't know if you actually got any sleep during that period, and that's a good test. It's a good test you were able to swim, keep your head above water, and incredibly thankful for all of the information, keeping us informed, keeping the public informed, keeping the connections that throughout the entire storm with all of the other players who were part of it. And I see Craig is here. Thank you to you, Craig. And if there are other people here too, I should put my glasses on, sorry. For collaborating throughout the entire event, for keeping the public informed, for stepping up into positions where perhaps you weren't before the event, and keeping it all together. Unbelievable. And I know, for something like this, for me, it was a real test to be in the position I am. And I think that, the words were used that this was an event that we hadn't experienced for almost 40 years as to the quantity of snow that we received. And so the effort that we had to make. And when I went to the Medill Works Yard, I was just blown away by meeting everybody and the absolute dedication from the entire team. So for that, I want to say thank you. And that's to our own team. I am incredibly proud, but also to all of the other players, to the Department of Public Works at the district, working with them. And I guess we have some thanks in order to the City of Toronto, which blows me away. I'm quite thrilled that we actually made that connection. to borrow equipment from them. And so we will be reaching out, I think, at some point to say thank you to our paramedic team, to our fire services team, to the OPP. And if I've missed anybody, Tarmo, you're going to, of course, fill that in. Hydro, oh, Hydro. You see, I'm always doing stuff like this, and incredible. You know, how many, I remember thinking on Christmas Eve in the middle of the night and the power went out, and the reason why I was up in the middle of the night is one of my dogs gets totally freaked out with hydro on and off and all of that stuff, and so I was with her. And I remember thinking, oh, how's it going to be on Christmas morning? And Christmas morning, hydro was on at my house. Not at everybody else's, but you know, on, off, and it was remarkable in the fact that I think we could have had hundreds of calls, and we didn't. So the last group that I would like to extend a big thank you to is to our community, because I believe that the stories from everybody in our community who stepped up, and you know, there were roads that people went out with their own trucks and they plowed as much as they could to assist. I know there was one counselor who actually wanted to volunteered his time and said something to the effect of, I don't know how to drive a truck or a plow, but listen, if you want to spend time with me, Craig, I don't know how you dealt with that counselor, but that counselor was ready to step up, and frankly, I think there were a lot of people in the community who felt that way. I heard directly from some of the private operators who said, listen, we just finished a job, what can we do? And we made those, and Tarmo, thank you for reaching out, we made those connections. And so from my perspective, I know there will always be things that we can learn from, and we'll hear about that. And that's a good thing. But from, as I said, from my perspective and on behalf of council, thank you. Thank you for a job well done. So with that, over to you, Tarmo, and we're going to hear some of the details about the event.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. Where to begin from that? You took the intro away. That said, there are two groups, Your Worship, that you did not mention that are very, very important in all of this. First are all of you around this table. A sincerest thank you to all of you for your support and your help. Our team at Medill took a huge volume of calls, and over the holidays with people not being in the office necessarily, I have to say Craig and Bobby, without mentioning too many names, were fielding a lot of phone calls. But it would have been, were it not for all of you for your leadership and your fielding calls from the public, it would have been a lot different for us. And so, not just that, but just the general support around the table, thank you. And our town team behind the scenes. There were so many people working behind the scenes. Again, Lisa Spolnick, I can't say enough about communications and the help and support she provided me. Everybody taking time away from their families. We had stories of our facilities people going in, dealing with alarms at the arenas, trudging through the 5 feet of snow and unplowed roads. The list goes on and on. But, thank you to our one town team because we wouldn't have been able to pull it off without that support. And I probably should mention the front line. I can't thank them enough for being out there in the conditions that they were in at all hours of the day. It was absolutely incredible. I'm going to start with a quick video from the view of a plow operator. Oh no, sorry, this is a fire truck. I've got it reversed here. So this was an easy call in terms of what they were going through. So this was a big fire truck on an already plowed route, but we had a plow out in front of them, admittedly, pushing through. That it was that short, which is it's a short. We're not videoing all the time when we're responding to emergencies, but that was an easy portion of the events. We've got plenty of pictures here where we're digging through more than waist deep snow with equipment, trying to get to people, making sure that we're getting everybody the help they need throughout the event. So what I'm going to do, this is going to be a very high level presentation. I'm not going to be going through all of the bullet points. My objective is to bring a far more detailed report to council that includes costing details, lessons learned, and a far greater analysis. We're kind of still in response mode at this point, and we're going at noon today. We're going to be having what's called in emergency management terms a hot wash, which is a debriefing where we bring key players around the table, and it's a very structured event. And we have we talk about what went well, what challenges we faced, lessons learned, and how we can improve our response in the immediate sense, and then moving to the future. So that's all to come, and that's all going to be incorporated into a bigger analysis of this for council and for the public, so that we do see that we are taking what we learned and moving forward with that. So one of the biggest challenges that we faced is this new normal of changing forecasts. Forecasts are not accurate at the best of times, but they seem to be becoming less accurate over time. And we'll see that. More often than not, what happens is that on Monday morning, they're going to tell us that on Saturday we're getting snowmageddon, and then by Saturday it's sunshine and lollipops all over again. That wasn't the case in this one. It went quite the other way around. So it started out with kind of, okay, it's going to be a snow event, and it got worse and worse throughout the week until it actually hit, and then now we got hit hard. So maybe lesson number one is to make sure that, as we're looking at forecasts, that complacency doesn't set in, hoping for, that nothing comes of it. We just prepare as if it's going to be this kind of event each time. So the biggest snowfall came in that period from the 24th to 26th, but it didn't end there. We did get snow, and then right on the heels of that was the big thaw. And each one of those presents different challenges. The type of snow that we got presents challenges. It was light and fluffy snow in the beginning, which seems nice, but it really, there are all kinds of hidden hazards under that snow for people like plow operators, and as you're digging out, there were trees under snow that you couldn't see, and we were hitting things and well beyond what the normal hits were. So at points in time throughout this, because of the nature of the snow and because of the winds and the sight lines and the hazards, we got a lot of questions about where the plows were. We did pull them off the road for health and safety, admittedly. That's one of the things that we are permitted to do when we declare a significant weather event. So it gives us the opportunity legislatively to protect our staff under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, to make sure that they're safe and not hitting something. The plows remained available, so the operators might not have been plowing their routes completely, although I will say that we had at least 2 or 3 plows on throughout all of this. They were available to emergency services on call, on a call-by-call basis. So when 911 calls came in and fire services, police services, or paramedics were having difficulty accessing, we would dispatch a plow with emergency services, and they would go clear the route for them. We did have, as I said, there were at least 2 2 to 4 operators on at any given time, and depending on their experience level and their comfort operating in the weather, they would be out there even in the worst of the worst. I will show you a video of one of those. This is just another view of kind of the typical snow. So on the left is a sweep that they had just done. Oh, here's the video. This is the left had been plowed, and now Bobby's plowing the right. This was plowing that needed to be done to access. This was a district road to access our municipal roadways. So there was no driving the plow truck even through that depth of snow. We had to plow our way into municipal roadways, or town of Huntsville roadways, rather. They're all municipal. So our first priority was, of course, public and staff safety. So public safety was looked after in 2 ways. First of all, the request of people not to drive. And that was something that the OPP was putting out there, stating that the conditions were too poor, please stay home, avoid unnecessary travel, all of the typical messaging there. And then the secondary part of public safety was, of course, having the plows available to respond together with emergency services. So that's how we were ensuring public safety through this entire event. And then our team's safety, or the staff safety, was we were working with our team members with their comfort level, with their experience level in the operations, and if it was just deemed completely unsafe, they weren't required to be pushing snow. And that's just in the best interest of everybody. We also had to keep in mind legislated requirements for hours of work. Hours of work, not just under what would be a required for workplaces under the Employment Standards Act, but all of our plow operators fall under commercial vehicle certification, and under those there are strict timelines, and you're only allowed to operate to a maximum of 13 hours within a 24-hour period, and it's mandatory to have rest periods, even in emergencies. It's very important to follow those, because we've all seen what happens when a tractor trailer drives off the road, and that's where that comes from. Our emergency services partners, can't say enough about them, but they were pushing through all of this. So they had all of the same challenges as the plow operators, and they didn't have plows on their vehicles. And just putting it in perspective for our firefighters, the turnout gear is well over 50 pounds additional on your body. It's something that they wear to pretty much every call, and it protects them. And then plus the response equipment that they had to carry in addition to shoveling their way in. So you're talking about well over 100 pounds of gear through waist deep snow just to put, in that's the firefighters. Personally, I can also speak from a paramedic's experience, moving a stretcher through this, moving people through this, carrying, all of the stuff. It's a lot of work that all of them put in well beyond what is required in a normal day. Okay, I think, is this the next? This is another, this is the fire one. Did we see this one already? Yeah, it's a repeat. We just had it twice in the video. Just again, anecdotally, going out there, flashing lights seem like a really, really good idea in terms of letting people know that you're there and having other people see the vehicles. But when you're driving and the lights are flashing like crazy and flashing back off the snow, you're blinded. It's a totally different world. So I've already talked about some of the critical partnerships. Again, coming back to our town team, first and foremost. Everybody from the frontline operators to the team that was supporting in the background quietly, making sure that all of the information was getting out to where it needed to be, that it was the correct information, and that all of the town assets were protected through this. We did develop new relationships with power workers as well. So when I talk about being dispatching a plow together with emergency services, that included Hydro. So Hydro had several different access issues that our operators helped clear the way for to ensure that power got on as quickly as possible. Can't say enough about the District of Muskoka. So their team internally, we had phone calls at the beginning multiple times a day. Emails were flying back and forth. So a lot of the information that I was sharing with council and with the public was thanks to work that was done collaboratively with the District of Muskoka, as well as the other area municipalities in Muskoka. We were all on the phone together. Our bordering municipalities were the ones we had the most contact with to kind of share resources, to look at who's got capacity to do what. It was a huge team effort, not just the town of Huntsville working through this alone. And then, as your worship pointed out, the City of Toronto generously donated 2 blowers for our cleanup efforts. Those blowers came as part of a report from the City of Toronto. A series of recommendations were made back when Mel Lastman brought in the military, and they weren't going to ever have that happen again. So those blowers are part of that equipment purchase. And instead of giving us their 2 oldest kind of breaking down pieces of equipment, they gave us their 2 brand newest loaders with brand new blowers, with just one ask, is that I return them in good condition. We will be returning one of them this week. We only require 1 for the work that we're doing, and in terms of capacity and volume, we're starting to wind down. And with the coming weather this week, I think it's only fair that Toronto has the equipment to respond if they need it at this point. I've jumped ahead here a little bit. Staffing was a little bit tricky through this for a number of different reasons. First of all of the restrictions and requirements that I've already outlined. We also had people ill. Even right now at Medill, we've got some kind of a cold running through, and we've got people down and out. It's no different than any other workplace, but we had that through the snowstorm. Some people did come in sick. I don't know if that's good or bad, but you want to give credit for people trudging in, but it is what it is. We do have some key vacancies right now at Medill that are presenting us with a little bit of challenge. And then we've got approved positions that we're moving forward and trying to fill all the time. An example of that would be seasonal operators. We're recruiting. We're no different than any of the contractors out there or other municipalities in terms of challenges with recruitment and of people. And to some extent, retention is also a challenge. So those all presented some of our challenges. This is one of the unfortunate events that we went through. Truck slid off into a ditch. It took a number of hours to get this truck out. So between plowing, availability of towing, and all the rest of that, we had, in addition to all of the other trees and power lines and snow, a lot of people just abandoned their vehicles right in the middle of roadways. And so there was one call, we were going out to help hydro right in the thick of it, and along Max Road, right in the middle of the road, there was a white car. I don't know how the operator saw it, but came to a stop. And unfortunately, with the size of these trucks, where it was on Max Road is there were ravines to both sides, and the operator couldn't tell where the ravines began and ended. So I just said, don't try doing a 50-point turn there. Stay, we'll get a tow truck. And the tow company, in this case, was very responsive. Within 30 minutes, they sent somebody. I kind of begged and pleaded with them on the phone and did my best case, and they were very responsive. So again, it's kind of one of those unsung heroes in one of these events. The tow companies were a critical partner in all of this. So the 3 C's. You're not going to find an event ever, an emergency event or otherwise, where communication doesn't come out as an issue. Very similar to doing any kind of employee engagement survey in an organization of any size, communication is always going to come out as as something that needs to be improved on. Volume of communication, there's always that question. You need to try and find that balance. You don't want to definitely not under communicate, but there can be information overload as well, and you have to be cognizant of both ends of that. Which is, you know, as I was writing the various different communications, I was trying to be mindful in the beginning, provide lots of more information, and then start to take the interval down over time to make sure that we're not overloading with information. The other challenge with communication in an emergency event is what the currency of the, because as the event evolves, things are changing and things can change very rapidly. So as a result, some of the information that you would put forward early on in the event has completely changed by the end, and it can be wrong information or misinformation later on in the event. So we have to make sure that we're staying on top of that. I don't think we were too challenged in that department, but where, you know, some of the feedback that I've been getting from members of the public as well as internally from our own team is that, you know, while we had, you know, certain areas of great communication mechanism, there were areas where we weren't doing enough in terms of keeping people up to date. I think the biggest feedback from the public was what the plan was. So that we did have the plan in the background, we were executing on the plan, but like, you know, every good group of workers, we just put our nose to the grindstone, heads down, and got it done, and just forgot to tell people we were doing it or what we were up to. That's where I think the communication could be far improved. And that this is, again, very early feedback. I haven't delved into kind of the analysis. Optimal staffing, I've briefly touched on that. One of the things we do need to look at is what that 24-hour coverage looks like. You know, what do we need on weekends and statutory holidays? You know, how do we cover off that far cleaner than what we were? I mean, we were, you know, admittedly scrambling a little bit to get people in. Equipment capacity and availability. This one is an interesting one. We have the equipment to deal with a normal Huntsville winter or a normal Huntsville winter event. There is no issue with our equipment. I need to put that out there first. When it comes to an event of this size, two things happen. One is that equipment breaks down. It's not meant for 5 feet of snow. And some of it is very easy fixes. Shear pins go on blowers regularly, and we just have to pop new ones in and carry on. Some of it can be catastrophic failures. We had a blower break a gearbox, like the gearbox was shredded in it, which is a replacement. That's a far bigger piece of work, and takes time to order those parts. Just want to assure everybody we do have the equipment we need. The question is you know, as we're looking through the broken stuff, as we're fixing it, the normal wear and tear, you know, do we replace it with brand new stuff, or do we just fix the broken parts? A gearbox is a classic example. So a gearbox for one of our sidewalk plows runs $11,000 to replace. And it's just short of that in terms of to fix it. And if you have a choice between fixing and replacing, you want to replace, it's just like a transmission. The car will never be the same, right? But then when we look at a new blower, a blower that's better suited to our needs, that comes in at $16,000. So do we, you know, spend the $11,000 to replace a gearbox, or do we replace a blower? So those are the kinds of questions that are starting to come up in terms of the equipment. Another item here that shone through is to have prearranged agreements and contracts. One of the advantages to having these kind of contracts in the background that you might not ever have to use, hopefully you don't have to use them, is that the town gets put first as a priority. So as we were starting to work with contractors and look at bringing in additional help, the phone response 9 times out of 10 was, well, we've got our own things going on right now as well, which is understandable. I mean, that's not a knock on anybody. It just is what it is. But if we had contracts in place that put the town as a priority, that might help move things a little bit faster going in the future. And the secondary benefit to having pre-arranged agreements and contracts is that we're dealing with all of the liability and insurance issues in the background. So getting the insurance certificates, for example, for the blowers from Toronto, because we have to take out our own insurance on that. We have to get insurance on floating them up on the float trucks. There are a whole bunch of series of things. If we had those pre-arranged, it would just be a couple of phone calls, get the equipment up here, as opposed to it took, a lot of people working in the background. And again, some more unsung heroes, people in finance were working with me madly to try and get us that necessary insurance coverage. The hot wash debriefing I've mentioned just briefly, it's at noon today. We're going to find far more lessons learned from that, and we'll be able to build up this list. And as I said, the next step would be to take all of that, including costing, and it'll be a best estimate of costing, because there are costs that are going to be easily identifiable and attributable to it, and then there'll be harder costs to suss out. So that full analysis will be presented here at this table at a future meeting. I don't know that January will be really realistic, but hopefully in February's council meeting is what I would look to present that to. And here is, Her Worship Mayor Alcock and key members from our team got together and they came down to do a little thank you presentation to the operators, and this was the picture taken in front of one of the plow trucks that were left standing through the whole thing. So that's what I would put forward at this point. What I have put in front of you are 4 pages of our town team. This is Town of Huntsville. These are the people that were out there doing this on our behalf and keeping us safe. And I would just, without reading the entire list, like to acknowledge everybody on there and for their huge contribution to the town and to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Tarmo. Are there any questions? I suspect there are. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Alcock. Thank you, Director Yukivi, for the presentation. Thanks to all the Public Works staff for getting us through this mess at Christmas. We all appreciate your efforts. It was definitely one for the records. I think by my estimation, if I remember 1998, there was a Christmas storm very similar, and this one was right on track with that one, I would say. Just a couple things I wanted to bring up. We can talk about it or discuss it further. You mentioned communication, and I agree with that. We need to put the message out earlier when we know a significant weather event could happen. Ideally, before the event occurs so the public can prepare. We also need to explain very clearly what a special weather event means. I don't think that, generally speaking, the public understands what that means when as a town we declare that. And so we need to clearly explain what it means, what happens to services and plowing when we declare that. There was a lot of public confusion about that, and I received many calls from people wanting to know what it meant exactly for them. I like the videos that Director Yukivi put out during the snow event. I think that was a great idea. I think that if that happened another time, we should continue to do that. I'd like to see it done a little bit earlier and often, so that people are, again, so we're communicating with people earlier. The mayor also put out a video, and same thing there. I think that was helpful, but I think we need to do it earlier and more often to update people as the event is occurring. You mentioned about contracting help and equipment, and I liked your idea about doing that earlier so that we have things on standby before the big event happens. I think that's an excellent idea, and prioritizing the town of Huntsville first. That would for sure, I think, have made things different for us in this event. Much like Hydro One does. I mean, during the event, I seen There was hydro workers from North Bay, Ottawa, so there's definitely, I think there's work to be done in that regard ahead of the event when we know it's coming. Worst case, it doesn't come, but if it does, we're set and ready as a town. Last point I'd like to make is that the phone system was not operating well during the event. We were telling people to call the town, but in many cases, they couldn't get through to the town. I talked to many people that were not able to get through. I actually tried to call myself, and I was not able to get through either, so that's an issue that needs to be addressed. People need to be able to get through on our phone system when there's an event like this happening. Thanks.
Thank you for all of those comments, Councillor Clark. I totally agree with you around the communication and the use of videos, and I echo the comment that you made about Lisa Spolnick. Her performance was stellar, and we just need to include that on a regular basis. And in fact, there is a policy moving forward with respect to exactly what you talked about, Councillor Clark. So that's, I completely agree with you. Is there anyone else who would, yes? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Tarmo, thank you so much, and Craig and everybody else in your team. I think one thing I want to acknowledge, it was tough for all of us as families going through Christmas and everything else, and some didn't have hydro for days. There were some missed Christmases. You know, COVID's finally over, we can have Christmas together, and some people didn't get to do that this year. But your staff, not only were they out there getting us prepared, but then they had to go home and deal with all the stuff we were dealing with. Lack of hydro, clearing your own driveways, dealing with all that stuff themselves. So I saw some stuff online. I think we need to avoid being online much, but and some of it was just untrue, right? So that was the problem, and maybe that comes down to earlier communication that Corey mentioned. But what I do want to acknowledge there are media partners like Your TV, Hunters Bay Radio, Metroland, and the Doppler. I found that they were very good at helping us out through this and getting the message out. And I know, Tarmo, speaking of communication, your communication to us was really, really good. We were updated constantly. We were also even updated if a media person contacted you, you let us know the answer, so we knew what you were saying to the media. There was one media outlet specifically, that I won't mention their names here, but they put out something that was blatantly untrue. I emailed them to let them know that what they were reporting was blatantly untrue, and they didn't care. That's not any of the partners I just mentioned. So what I'd like to acknowledge is that your communication to us was stellar, you know, and that was something that I appreciated, so I had better answers for people. And I know, Corey, you mentioned that your communication with Tarmo was excellent as well. So I just want to say thank you for everything you guys did as a team and what you then had to deal with when you got home. So thank you.
Okay, is that all right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And with that, you're staying.
Yes, I am.
You are staying because we
No
are
escape.
moving right along to agenda item number 4 with respect to report number OPS 2023-1 River Mill Park Permanent Washroom Design and Site Preparation Update. I do have a motion. I know, so you'd like me to do that first. So apparently, we now have approval or consent to name our donor, and that's very exciting. Yes, a local resident, Margaret Connor of Huntsville. And I just think it's pretty cool that someone saw the debate back in the summer of 2022 in our community and said, you know, I would like to see a more permanent solution here, and I think I can help out by contributing $300,000 to make this happen. How incredible. Thank you very much, Ms. Connor, and we will meet her when the washrooms are near completion, and she'll be part of it, and we'll do a big, big, big thank you to her. So that is neat, and I just wanted to say again, thank you to her, and that we will see her at some point in the future. But that is who it is, and that she's local. So thank you, Ms. Connor. With that, I do have a motion that's been handed to me. so cool, all of this. This is very organized. A motion moved by Councillor Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that council accept the final exterior design of the washroom as attached to report OPS-2023-1, and further that council direct staff to proceed with the necessary site preparation, including the recommended removal of all trees to ensure public and property safety, and further that council direct staff to proceed with clearing a walking trail from West Street North between Susan Street East and Caroline Street East into Rivermill Park, terminating at the site of the new washroom facility, and further that council directs staff to complete the washroom facility installation with landscaping that includes planting of traditional Indigenous peoples' medicines, including cedar and sweetgrass, together with replacement trees of appropriate species in appropriate locations. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Ukibi.
So I'll start with communication. Just having heard the motion read out loud, I do understand that there might be some confusion around what the work is that's intended. So I think the highlight here is first of all, Ms. Connor's generous donation has netted us a fantastic new washroom facility. And this washroom facility is going to be placed in a position in Rivermill Park that is easily accessible, and we have an opportunity to make it, the accessibility to that site, even better, and improve access to Rivermill Park. I want to highlight this first. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is taking from West Road down into the park, an old trail that is kind of overgrown now, and re-clearing the trail, just the trail portion itself, under the trees, leaving all the trees in place and the greenery to the extent we possibly can, cutting it back and making that trail accessible for all, so that we can use that. That would be coming down to the location where the actual washroom facility is going to be built, which is on the north side of the parking lot, next to the parking lot next to the playground there, in a clearing behind the hydro lines, I'm going to call it for the moment. So that brings us to part two of the conversation. Not all of the trees are going to be taken out of there. This is not a clear cut. What the trees that we're looking at removing from there are what the arborist, the certified arborist, has deemed as trees that are unsafe. There are other municipalities in Ontario that have experienced large limbs falling off and actually killing people. There was one in Trinity Bellwoods Park in Toronto of recent memory that I know of. And this is a big liability for the town. We do need to take what an arborist or the certified professional is. I'm not a professional in trees, whatsoever. So we bring in that certified arborist to tell us whether the trees are safe or not. Over the years, along the hydro line there at the north end of the park, Lakeland has done their due diligence and done line clearing, and we see that all the time by removing a series of limbs and shaping the trees. And unfortunately, the net result of that shaping of those trees, there are a couple of things in that report, is that the trees have grown in funny ways around the hydro lines. And then when they went and did the most recent line clearing, and the most recent line clearing was done as part of routine maintenance first and foremost, but secondly also to help access for connection for power for the new washroom. They've taken all of the branches off the south side of the trees along the line. So that leaves these misshapen, heavy limbs on the north side, all of which overhangs where the new washroom is going to be. So overhanging the washroom, the challenge that we're going to have there is that we've got a lot of people movement potentially happening in that area, and then the facility itself, people safety first. And so the other thing that's happened as a result of the line clearing work, these are evergreens. When you cut off limbs and leave large portions of the tree exposed, disease sets in. So there are a number of trees that are actually bored into by animals. You can see that, as well as potential rot setting into the cores, according to the arborist. And so there's the dual risk. So now we've got imbalanced trees that are top heavy or heavy to the north side, combined with rotten cores. So sadly, these are some of the mature trees along the hydro line, but for safety purposes, those mature trees would have to be cut down in their entirety just for safety. We can see the result of just limbing them, notwithstanding what I've just outlined, but there are a couple in there where Lakeland just took all the limbs off it, and they're poles, basically, and they're sticks in there. So that's another option, but I don't think that that's particularly beautifying our centerpiece park in the town of Huntsville. So the concept is to take the series of trees, mature trees, out from underneath the hydro line along the line of where the washroom would be. Along the walking trail, we're not looking at removing any trees. It is just kind of brush cutbacks, widening it out so that we can put down the proper base and then determine how to make that walkway as smooth and accessible as possible for everybody. So that is what we're proposing. I think the other relevant updates here are I provided pictures of what the exterior is being proposed to be, the exterior look or exterior finish. I'm just working with New Smart Toilet, who has been awarded the contract to kind of put the finishing touches on what that design looks like. The interior design is set. It's everything that I've presented before. It is kind of the self-cleaning, stainless steel, clean kind of interior finish, highly computerized, and there we have it. So I welcome questions.
Thank you for that. Before I ask if there are any questions, would anyone like the director to bring the pictures up on the screens, or are you comfortable? You speak to it?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Might be helpful. Are there any questions? Councillor Stone.
Technical help?
Do we wait for pictures? Anyways,
It depends.
let's not wait for pictures. Anyways.
Let's go dive right in.
All right,
Dive
so
right in.
I totally understand that the trees have been misshapen by hydro for their own purposes, and these trees are top-heavy. I'm sick to lose that greenery and the height of those trees, but I do understand. And so I have a couple questions if I could. So the first one about the trees. Is it just the big mature pines that are a bit stripped along the hydro line, the pines that are going to come out? Or is it only where beside the new washroom?
So there are 4 large evergreens along where the washroom is going to be, plus one that's further up the line. The one that's further up the line, it's clear to see why it has to come down. Like it's got bored holes in it and stuff like that. That's the one you can obviously see has been damaged and needs to come down. The 4 along the washroom are the only ones that are coming down there.
All right, well, that certainly makes sense to me. If I get with a couple other things. So the path, is it going to be gravel or is it going to be paved? How wide is it? And is it necessary?
Well, sorry, I didn't do the through you, Your Worship.
Sorry.
The initial look is going to be mulch to get the ground to settle there. And then once the ground is settled, we'll come back to council and make recommendations on what the final finish on the actual trail should be, because there will be a cost to that. The mulch itself won't be any cost because we're taking trees and chipping them.
And if I follow just this very last one, the washroom is situated facing the river. So the 2 doors will be facing the river, or will they be facing the parking lot?
I'm gonna have to ask for some help to get photos up here.
That's, the photos would be helpful,
Yeah, this is where we get into that, and I apologize for not being more prepared.
but the washroom is facing the parking lot.
Yes, the front of the washroom is facing the parking lot itself.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Armour?
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I was just looking at the Lakeland Hydro photo that they have, the diagram, and it does show it turned the other way, facing the path. So I think that's where the confusion's coming in.
Yeah. This is, through you, Your Worship, this is one of those situations where I tried to provide maybe too much information, and I just included everything in the kitchen sink.
While we're looking for the pictures, I, just on that last comment from Councillor Stone with respect to the number, Tarma, you said 4 large evergreen plus one further up the line. There are additional trees other than evergreens, or is it just 5 trees in total?
I believe it's just 5 trees in total
total?
that are the big, large, mature ones. There are some smaller, like
Smaller
sticks and,
trees that are-
and things like that that are coming out of there as well.
So primarily, we're looking at 5 large trees. That's helpful. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Alcog. I understand what Councillor Stone is saying. I'm reluctant to approve removal of trees as well, but I understand the issue here is a safety concern for both property and people. We don't want to have our brand-new washroom that Mrs. Connors generously donated the funds for to be wrecked by a dangerous tree. I would say I'm not really happy with the way the motion is worded. It says, council directs staff to proceed with the necessary site preparation, including the recommended removal of all trees to ensure public and property safety. I'm just wondering if it shouldn't say that removal of trees that are deemed dangerous or diseased. Just a comment. Thank you.
And I think an easy one might be just to remove the all, just remove trees to ensure public property safety, or we can ponder on that, Tarmo can ponder on that. But I do have a question, thank you for that, Councillor Clark, from Councillor Renwick. Did you? No? No? Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald. I know you did, but I, for some reason, thought that Councillor Renwick had a question.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment, I guess, for you, that I know previous council has discussed the option of removing all the overhead wires in Rivermill Park. I know the cost is going to be extremely high, but you know, are we being short-sighted and not maybe addressing this at some point earlier than later? Costs are just going to continue to go up to have that exercise performed, and I'm wondering if it's something that we should consider at this point to eliminate the potential of removal of more trees and to give us a more flexible plan going forward in the future with what may happen at the park. So I don't know.
I'm going to put that, thank you for that, Councillor Fitzgerald, and I think right away, Councillor Cluche would like to comment.
I'm not going to comment about through your worship. Mike, I got a concern about the pathway that's being done. You said you're putting mulch down. Just because of wheelchair accessibility, these washrooms are wheelchair accessibility, and I don't think wheelchairs go very good through mulch. So how accessible are these going to be until we get it asphalted or a good gravel base? How long is it going to be before they're going to be able to use them?
Great question.
Through you, Your Worship, I don't actually have a timeline on that.
Okay.
It's a point well taken that wheelchairs will not operate through mulch. However, they will be wheelchair accessible from the parking lot.
Okay.
So the actual build right from day one will be accessible from the parking lot for wheelchairs. The objective is to make that trail wheelchair accessible, but we need to look at what we're getting into in terms of the condition of the trail and the soil underneath and all the rest of that. Because as we kind of start to clear things back, it's going to expose dirt, and then with rain and mud and things like that, we're going to have to do something with the base to let it settle and then finish the top down.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Cloutier. And now I believe Councillor Renwick has a question, comment?
I do, thank you, Your Worship. And through you, in continuation what Councillor Cloutier said, do we need to have the path from West Road to the washrooms? Could we not just have the accessibility from the parking lot? Is there a reason why we have two areas of access, or is it,
Perhaps through your worship.
Our CAO would like to respond.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. So we obviously have to have an access point. We could have multiple access points. I believe the thought was having the path sort of from the parking lot playground area was for ease of access from that location. You could also access it up through, there's, what's that little roadway that goes from the parking lot up to, King Street.
Yeah.
So you could access it off through there as well. So we have multiple options with respect to access. It will be part of the site finalization that is in, I think we had $60,000 in the budget. So with respect to accessibility, we are obligated to ensure that the access is accessible. So Director Ukivi will certainly ensure that whether it's the path or the alternate access is accessible. There are forms of mulch. So for example, in the playground right now, there is a loose material that I can't recall what the name of it is, but it is very accessible. It's compactable. So we could certainly look into alternate options as well. But as a municipality, we are obligated to make sure it's accessible.
I just want to say I wasn't ignoring your comment or question, Councillor Fitzgerald. I was wondering if anyone else wanted to weigh in on that. But in the meantime, it's certainly an interesting point, and it's a valid one, and especially as we move toward all of these significant weather events, and we're constantly dealing with hydro lines, and it is within our jewel in the town. So I'm going to ask our CAO to provide sort of a high-level response to that, because I don't want it to go away, the comment, but it's not an easy one, that's for sure.
Thank you, Worship. So Director Ukivi, I don't believe, has had those conversations with our power provider. It's absolutely something we can discuss. It's not something we could commit to at this time because we certainly don't want to delay the project to ensure that they're operational by May, but we absolutely hear what you're saying, and Director Ukivi can have those conversations with our power provider to see if that's an option. If not now, something moving forward.
Councillor Fitzgerald? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, CAO Corey. Yeah, it just seems to me that it's something that has come up in the past, and, you know, we haven't dealt with it, even in previous councils before my tenure, and it seems like it may provide more opportunities in the future if we don't have to deal with the overhead wires.
Yep, appreciate it. Councillor Schumacher?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Alcock, to Director Ukivi. And again, in general, I guess, one of the things that I believe I had brought up in the past is a conversation around when we do park development. What are those nice to have? So like the underground wire as opposed to overhanging. We talk about climate change, the issues with Kent Park and shade, and continuing issues around park development and creating shade opportunities for, the playgrounds do get hot. People are, grandparents now are taking their kids and would like a shaded area. So maybe it is a larger conversation, and I know we're doing that, climate project there, that committee. Maybe this is an area that we can look at, and I know you and I have talked a bit about that, so maybe it is something that we can look at moving forward, that when we do develop our parks, what are those sort of nice to have things?
I have to say thank you for that, Councillor Schumacher. I think you're bang on. And that is one of the new committees, which is looking at climate change and environmental initiatives. So that could find itself parked in that committee for a bit. I was just reminded, though, we actually recently did have a discussion with Lakeland about a number of the larger issues, and they are actually looking at areas where they would like to do some underground burying. And of course, as we all know, it's a bit of an issue with rocks and granite and all of that stuff. Having said that, it is something that is on their radar. And so I think that discussions, as we talked about, between you, Director Yukivian, and Lakeland and Hydro, it is timely. So basically, thank you for raising that, Councillor Fitzgerald. I think it is a timely issue. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to, we didn't deal with your suggestion of amending the motion, Councillor Clark. Do you still want to do that, or are you okay? Is there an understanding, perhaps, with what is here?
Thank you, Mayor Alcock. I think there's an understanding, but I think it'd be better if we were to amend it, if possible, just to be clear.
Okay, so give me 1 minute, please. Maybe 30 seconds. Probably Tanya's all over this. Okay, hold on. Councillor Clark, if we amend, you need to move the amendment. And are you suggesting that it is in with respect to the second clause, and further that council directs staff to proceed with the necessary site preparation, including the recommended removal of, would you like to delete all and just say of trees to ensure public and property safety?
Thank you, Mayor Alcock. I think that would be sufficient, yeah.
Okay, so the amendment is the deletion of the word all. Do we have a seconder? I see several people. Councillor Morrison is seconding that. All right. So we have a motion to amend, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Morrison, that the that we remove the word all in the second paragraph. And further, that council directs staff to proceed with the necessary site preparation, including the recommended removal. Good enough? We're removing the word all. Okay, for the second time, we're removing the word all. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? That carries. And so I am going to call the question of the main motion as amended. All those in favor? And that carries too. Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for that suggestion. Moving right along. So we are now at number 5, bylaws and agreements for passage, and I do have a motion moved by Councillor Schumacher, seconded by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-1 be reported and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 11th day of January 2023. A, bylaw 2023-1, Woodstream Inc., Woodstream Drive, part lot control. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to go like that and that. All right. So moving to general information, we do have a community flag raising Bell Let's Talk Day, Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. So I'm putting that out to the community and inviting everybody who would like to attend. That is on the 25th. And yes, Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, do we know what time that's going to be? Is it going to be at 11, the normal time?
I'm
for flag
assuming it's
raising?
11 o'clock?
Because we are in a planning meeting that day.
Oh, right. So, Deputy Clerk, can I? We don't have a time. So if we're in planning, then probably that's not a great time if it's 11.
Planning's at 1. Committee of Adjustments at 9.
Right, so 11 actually might work because it might work. Okay, all right, good. Thank you for that, Counselor Stone. Good. All right, any other comments or questions with respect to the flag raising? Okay, seeing none, I am moving right along. I have a motion moved by Counselor Fitzgerald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public commencing now at 10:05 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following matters pertaining to the following sections under the Municipal Act 2001. 7.1, Section 2392, E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. 7.1.1, confidential report development 2023-1, Ontario Land Tribunal, appeals of the community planning permit bylaw. And 7.2, section 2392, D, labor relations or employee negotiations. 7.2.1, confidential report HR-2023-1. All those in favor? And that carries. Apparently we are. I did. Because I'm about to read a motion. Okay. I have a motion moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that recommendation contained within confidential report Development 2023-1 be adopted. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Carried. And I have another motion moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that the recommendation contained within confidential report HR 2023-1 be adopted. Questions, comments? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2023-2 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 11th day of January 2023. All those in favor? And that carries. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 10:57 a.m. All those in favor? And that